I want to open this first hour, though, talking about the tax bill and the train crash, or derailment, as it were. And in fact, let me start with the train, just to get this out. This train derailment yesterday was completely unnecessary. Back a decade ago, in fact, it was more than a decade ago, Congress put into place this thing called positive train control. About half of all trains in the United States have it. About a third of all passenger trains in the United States have it. And basically, you know how if you buy a 2000 whatever, actually I rented a Prius at the airport day before yesterday, and it's amazing. If I go out of my lane, a little light flashes and it goes beep 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 beep, right? I mean, you know, this technology is not like insanely sophisticated or hugely expensive. It's in pretty much every car being sold right now. And yet, and you know, and we developed this for trains where, you know, every now and all along the train tracks there are these little transponders, these transmitters that say, okay, you're going this fast, here's the speed limit, and by the way, you know, if the train is going 80 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone, it actually slows down the train. The conductor has no say in the matter. You know, the train is a smart train. Nothing wrong with that. It's on tracks. It's not like, you know, a driverless car. And we started fixing this. We started doing something about this. And then the train companies came along, the ones who own all the track, right? The ones who refused to upgrade their track. The reason why Amtrak takes forever to get from D.C. to Boston via New York, or just, you know, to New York, the reason it takes forever is because it's going on old track that is owned by freight rail companies, and they don't care that the track is, you know, if it's capable of carrying high-speed passenger rail. It's not even an issue for them, other than the fees that they get from Amtrak for use of the track. So we put into place this positive train control thing that would actually prevent these kind of accidents. And then the train companies came to Congress and said, oh, we can't afford to do this. It's going to cost a couple $100,000 a train. We can't. And so Congress said, okay, you got until 2018. It was supposed to be in place in 2015, 2 years ago, nationwide. We saw this movie before. We saw this movie back in the late 1970s when every country in the world was moving to harden the airplane cockpit doors, and the United States said, nah, because the airlines said we don't want to do it. There was actually legislation proposed, might have been in the 80s, but it was back during that era when, you know, right after all that spate of hijackings to Cuba and whatnot. Let's harden our cockpit doors. I mean, you know, El Al was the founder of this technology, essentially, but it moved to all of the airlines in Europe. You know, pretty much anybody who flew to Israel figured it out really early on, but by the 80s, it was ubiquitous, except in the United States. Why? Because a hardened cockpit door is another 100 grand on an airplane, and the airlines didn't want to pay for it, and thus we got 9/11. So it's like, and these, by the way, are regulations. And here you've got Donald Trump saying, I'm going to cut the regulations. We're going to do away with the regulations. We're going to, you know, look at this giant pile of regulations since 1960. We're going to do away with them. Well, we've developed a lot of toxic chemicals since 1960. We've developed a lot of toxic technology since 1960. Regulations, by and large, are consumer protections, and they ain't happening. So anyhow, on that, I think it's a good thing that the media is starting to talk about this, you know, positive train control. But okay, back to the tax scam, the Republican tax scam. This is running full tilt boogie ahead. Last week, Thomas Piketty and Emmanuel Says, two of the world's top economists, actually it was five economists, they were the two most high profile. They released this incredible report. It's called the World Inequality Report. And in this, they say the richest 1% of Americans held 39% of the nation's wealth in 2016. Now, in the abstract, you know, 1% owning about 40% of everything seems kind of unfair, or whatever word you want to apply to it. But you know, what does that mean in context? What was it in 1980? What was it when Ronald Reagan came into office and began reversing this process? If you look at the health and wealth of the American working class, the American middle class, from the 1930s, or really from the 1940s, you want to take the Depression out of the equation, from the end of World War II until 1980, People making less than, in today's money, $100,000 a year, making less than $100,000 a year in today's money, saw their income grow at the fastest rate in the history of the United States. Now, in large part, that was because we were at the highest level of unionization in the history of the United States. Dwight Eisenhower ran for re-election in 1956, bragging about the fact that over 1 million new people had been added to unions. This was a Republican thing as well as a Democratic thing back then. Everybody agreed, hey, you know, helping the middle class is a good thing. Building America, good thing. But what they noted is the average annual income for the bottom 50% of Americans, half of us, has stayed over the last 4 decades since Reagan became president at $16,000 per adult, inflation adjusted. Now, you hear about household income. Household income is up. Well, yeah, because now you've got 2 and 3 and in some cases 4 people in a household working. And it's been several years since I've seen government statistics that actually quoted individual income numbers. And the reason why is because they haven't changed since 1980. In many areas, they've gone down. Many parts of the country, they've gone down. While household income has gone up because more people are working. And then if you look at the top 1,300 households, 0.001% of Americans, the top 1,300 households, their income since 1980 has gone up 636%. And so what are the Republicans doing with their tax policy? They're saying, hey, let's increase the income for that top 100th of 1%. Is this fair? Is this reasonable? Is this, you know, 60% of Americans think that this tax bill is a scam. In fact, here's the exact numbers. 55% of Americans explicitly oppose the Republican tax bill versus 33% who support them. This is from a graphic over at the top of democraticunderground.com. 66% of Americans believe that the tax bill is principally going to benefit the very, very wealthy and not the middle class. And they're right, by the way. A new study by the Tax Policy Center finds that next year, nearly 2/3 of the benefits, over 60%, nearly 2/3 of the benefits of this tax bill are going to go to the richest 20% of Americans. By 2027, 84% of all the benefits from this tax bill are going to go to the top 1% of Americans. The vote is going to be this afternoon. They have not yet voted on it. Blue state Republicans, MSNBC is reporting right now, blue state Republicans say that would be like the California 14. I mentioned flipthe14.com, I think is the website, about the 14 Republicans who are elected in California. Hey, you know, let's replace these guys. What do you have? You know, people who want to have this kind of tax policy, this kind of social engineering? Really? So your thoughts on the best way to stop the tax bill. What is the best way to stop this tax bill? Is it a matter of simply calling your elected representatives, which you can do right now? Or is there something else? I mean, you know, talking about it, obviously, publicizing it, trying to fight back the BS coming out of Fox News and right-wing hate radio. I mean, what are the best alternatives? Have you had any conversations recently with any of your friends about this tax bill? What are you hearing from people? How's it selling in your neck of the woods?